Good morning. Not the ordinary silence of early morning in Genoa City when the streets still yawned awake and crimson lights had only just started grinding espresso for the first rush. Not the elegant silence of the Abbott mansion before Tracy came downstairs with a book in one hand and gentle wisdom in the other. Not even the uneasy silence that sometimes settled over the Newman Ranch before Victor dropped a bomb into breakfast. This was different. This silence had teeth. At Fairview, the nurses noticed it first. Patty Williams was rarely quiet for long. Whether she was muttering to herself, laughing at nothing anyone else could hear, whispering warnings about danger no one had yet noticed, or insisting she had remembered something vitally important, Patty filled empty spaces with a restless energy that made everyone around her uneasy. So when the morning nurse opened Patty's door and found the room empty, bed untouched, window cracked open, and one slipper lying in the middle of the floor like evidence from a crime scene, the silence didn't feel accidental. It felt staged. It felt like a message. Within 20 minutes, Genoa City was already beginning to tremble. Paul Williams arrived at Fairview with his jaw set and his pulse already pounding. Though years had passed and countless crises had rearranged the city's loyalties, one fact remained stubbornly true. When Patty disappeared, disaster usually followed. He stood in the doorway of her room, taking in every detail. The bent curtain rod, the chipped paint near the window frame, the faint scrape marks on the floor, and then the nurse said the one thing he had been dreading. "She didn't leave voluntarily." Paul turned sharply. "How do you know?" The nurse swallowed. "Because Patty was terrified last night. She kept saying the same thing over and over." Paul stepped closer. "What thing?" The nurse hesitated. She said, "He found me. He finally found me." A chill went through him. Did she say who? No, but she kept begging us not to turn off the lights. Paul looked back at the empty room. Patty had enemies. Patty had ghosts. Patty had a history so jagged it could cut anyone who got too close. But this didn't feel like one of Patty's spirals. It felt organized, controlled, deliberate. Someone had taken her. And if someone had taken Patty Williams, it meant one of two things. Either they wanted leverage or they wanted secrets. In Genoa City, both were deadly. Across town, Phyllis Summers was halfway through a sharp, caffeinated rant at Daniel about app strategy, branding, and why nobody under 30 seemed to answer phones anymore when hers rang. She glanced at the screen. Paul. Her face changed instantly. Daniel noticed. "What happened?" Phyllis answered without looking at him. "Paul, tell me." Her expression hardened as she listened. Then, slowly, she sat down. Daniel frowned. "Mom?" She ended the call. "Patty's missing." Daniel blinked. "Missing as in disappeared?" Phyllis let out a humorless laugh. "With Patty, missing can mean 10 different things and all of them are bad." "Do they think she ran?" "No." Phyllis stood abruptly. "They think she was taken." Daniel's voice lowered. "Who would kidnap Patty?" Phyllis grabbed her coat. "That's exactly the kind of question I don't want answered too late." Because for all her sarcasm, all her eye rolls, all her justifiable fury over the chaos Patty had inflicted over the years, Phyllis knew something most people forgot. Patty noticed things. She pieced together fragments other people dismissed. She lived inside madness, yes, but madness sometimes brushed up against the truth before anyone else could see it. If someone had kidnapped Patty, they weren't just grabbing the weakest target in town. They were grabbing someone who knew something, and Phyllis had a very bad feeling about what that something might be. At Jabot, Jack Abbott was reviewing a proposal he had no intention of approving when Diane entered his office without knocking. Normally, he would have smiled. Normally, she would have teased him about being too predictable. Normally, but not today. "Patty's gone," Diane said. Jack stared at her. "How do you know?" Michael called. Lauren heard from Paul. Jack leaned back slowly. Patty. Just hearing her name was enough to stir up old dread. Patty had been a fracture line through too many lives, his included. She had loved him, hated him, haunted him, and nearly destroyed more than one family along the way. Time had changed many things, but not the emotional wreckage attached to Patty's name. Diane folded her arms. "You think this has something to do with us?" Jack looked out the window. "With Patty, I never rule anything out." "You think she was targeted because of the Abbott family?" "I think Genoa City has a way of dragging old histories into new disasters." He turned back to her. "And Patty is never random." Diane frowned. "That's not exactly comforting." "It wasn't meant to be." A beat passed. Then Jack said quietly, Call Kyle. Tell him to stay alert. No unnecessary meetings, no schedule posted publicly, and tell security I want eyes everywhere. Diane stared. Jack, this could be unrelated. It could be. His voice sharpened. And if it isn't? She didn't answer, because she already knew the truth. In Genoa City, paranoia wasn't a flaw. It was survival. Patty woke to darkness and the smell of damp wood. For several seconds, she didn't move. Then memory hit all at once. Footsteps outside her room, a shadow at the door, the sting of something chemical over her mouth, the dizzy collapse into black. She sat up too fast and pain exploded through her head. "Oh," she whispered, clutching her temple. "Oh, that is rude. That is very rude." Her voice shook, but not from confusion, from recognition, because she knew this feeling. The helplessness, the disorientation, the certainty that someone else had taken control of the script. A dim light flickered on somewhere above her, not enough to brighten the room, only enough to turn the dark into shapes. Wooden walls, concrete floor, metal chair in the corner, a tray with water she didn't trust, and across from her, on a small table, sat a single object, a photograph. Patty stared at it, breath catching. It was old, slightly bent at the corners, and it showed a group of people at a charity gala years ago. Faces smiling, glasses raised, everyone pretending to be safer than they really were. Jack, Victor, Nikki, Ashley, Phyllis, and one man at the very edge of the frame, almost cut off, half in shadow. A man most people would never notice. Patty noticed him instantly. "No," she breathed. "No, no, no." The door behind her opened, heavy, deliberate. She didn't turn right away because she already knew. "I wondered how long it would take you," said a low voice. Patty shut her eyes. "Too long," she whispered. "It took me too long." Then she turned and smiled the smile of someone who was both terrified and vindicated. "I knew you weren't dead." By late afternoon, Paul had already assigned officers, reviewed security footage, checked traffic cameras, and leaned hard on every contact he had left. None of it was enough. Fairview's camera feed had glitched for 11 minutes. The back access road showed an unregistered transport van. A nurse had seen a man in orderly scrubs, but the face mask and cap made identification impossible. It was clean. Too clean. Chance Chancellor joined Paul in the bullpen with a file tucked under his arm. "I checked similar abductions within 200 miles. Nothing close." Paul rubbed his forehead. "That doesn't help." "No," Chance agreed, "but this does." He handed over a printout. Paul scanned it. "What am I looking at?" "Financial transfers. Someone made 3 cash purchases over the last month from shell accounts tied to a storage property outside the city." Paul looked up. "And?" "The shell trail intersects with an old alias." Paul's expression changed. "Whose alias?" Chance didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Ian Ward." The room seemed to go still. Paul's grip tightened on the paper. "No." "It may be a fake trail." "It may be," Paul snapped. "But if Ian Ward is somehow in this, we move faster," Chance finished. Paul exhaled hard, because if this had anything to do with Ian Ward, then Patty's kidnapping wasn't just about revenge or leverage. It was cult logic, psychological warfare, a game played by someone who liked breaking minds more than bodies, and Patty's mind had already been broken too many times. That evening, Phyllis sat alone in her suite, staring at nothing. Daniel had told her to rest. Lucy had texted a heart emoji and then a skull emoji, which was somehow both alarming and sweet. Summer had called twice. None of it cut through the tight knot forming in Phyllis's chest because memory had started to scratch. A fragment, a detail, something Patty had said weeks ago in one of their strange accidental run-ins. Phyllis stood suddenly. "No way." She grabbed her phone and called Paul. He picked up immediately. "Please tell me you have something useful." Phyllis paced. "A few weeks ago, I saw Patty outside society." "Why?" "Because life hates me, Paul. Focus." She was agitated, kept talking about a party from years ago. She said there was a ghost in the photo. Paul paused. "A photo?" "Yes, some old gala. I brushed it off because, hello, Patty, but she said something weird." "What?" Phyllis stopped pacing. She said, "Everybody thought they invited a banker. They invited a burial instead." Paul went silent. "Paul, that's not gibberish." "I know." He was already moving. She could hear the scrape of a chair, muffled voices in the background. "What party?" he asked. Phyllis frowned. I don't know, something big. Charity, maybe? Newman? Abbott? People with too much money pretending to be human. That narrows it down to every year in Genoa City. Then start with photos. Paul's voice turned grim. I already am. Back in the dim room, Patty sat very still. Her kidnapper did not rush. He never had. That was part of what made him dangerous. Most monsters in Genoa City wanted spectacle. They wanted shouting, panic, headlines. This man liked patience. He liked allowing fear to expand quietly until it filled every corner. He stepped into the light enough for Patty to see him clearly. Gray at the temples now, sharper around the mouth, eyes as empty and watchful as a winter lake. You've gotten older, Patty said. So have you. She laughed too brightly. Well, that's comforting. We're both mortal after all. He ignored that. Do you remember what you saw? Patty tilted her head. You mean then or now? Don't play games. She leaned back against the wall. I'm not playing. I'm surviving. There's a difference. His gaze hardened. What do you remember from the gala? She looked at the old photo again. The crystal chandeliers, the soft blur of expensive lies, the smile she now knew had concealed something rotten. I remember everyone looking the wrong way, Patty said. He crouched in front of her. And? I remember a file changing hands. His face did not move, but she felt the shift in him. And? He repeated. Patty smiled faintly. I remember someone saying Catherine could never know. He stood. Do you remember who said it? Yes. He waited. Patty did not answer. Instead, she whispered, That's why you took me. At the Abbott house, Tracy was the one who found it. Jack, she called from the living room, holding an old album. I think this is the event Paul was asking about. Jack crossed the room. Diane followed. Tracy flipped to a page protected by cloudy plastic. There it was, a charity gala from nearly 2 decades ago, hosted jointly by Newman Enterprises and Chancellor Interests. Everyone in formal wear, everyone smiling. Jack took the album. His eyes moved from face to face. Victor, Nikki, Ashley, Phyllis, himself. Then the man at the edge of the frame. Jack frowned. Who is that? Diane leaned closer. I've seen him before. Tracy looked at the caption underneath. The donor list says he attended as a representative for some private investment group. Jack's expression darkened. That's no banker? Diane looked at him. You know him? Not personally, but I know the type. Jack kept staring at the face. That man was around during one of the ugliest fights over Chancellor properties. Small deals disappeared, paperwork got rerouted. Catherine thought someone was circling the company through proxies. Tracy said softly, Are you saying Patty remembered something from that night? Jack closed the album. I'm saying Patty may have remembered who helped bury it. At 8:14 p.m., Paul's phone buzzed with an encrypted video file sent from an untraceable number. No caption, no demand, just a file. Chance and Paul watched it together in an interview room. The image shook for the first few seconds, then stabilized. Patty sat in a chair, pale but alert under a hanging bulb. Her hair was disheveled, her mouth was dry, but her eyes were startlingly clear. Someone off camera said, Tell them what you told me. Patty stared into the lens. For a moment, Paul thought she would scream. Instead, she spoke calmly. 6 words that made both men go cold. The wrong Newman buried the truth. The video ended. Chance looked at Paul. What the hell does that mean? Paul replayed it. Patty's face, Patty's certainty. Patty, for once, not rambling, just delivering a message. The wrong Newman buried the truth, Paul repeated. Chance's eyes narrowed. Victor? Maybe? Adam? Maybe? Nick? Victoria? Paul shook his head. Patty chose those words carefully. She wants us looking past the obvious. Chance crossed his arms. Or she wants us looking exactly where her kidnapper wants us to look. Paul stared at the black screen. Either way, the clock had started. Michael Baldwin made the mistake of showing Victor the clip that same night. By the time it ended, Victor's face had become a mask. Michael set the phone on Victor's desk. I thought you needed to see it before rumors spread. Victor said nothing. Michael adjusted his tie. Do you know what she meant? Victor rose slowly from his chair and walked toward the window. That woman, he said at last, has always existed in a cloud of instability. Michael was not fooled. Patty sounded lucid. Victor turned. Lucid people can still lie. True. Michael held his gaze. But you're not dismissing this as nonsense. Victor's silence was answer enough. Michael lowered his voice. If there's something from Catherine's era, something tied to Chancellor, there is always something tied to Chancellor. Victor cut in. That company has been at the center of half the betrayals in this city. Michael nodded carefully. Then tell me which betrayal this is. Victor's eyes chilled. Watch yourself. Michael did not back down. If Patty was kidnapped over something she saw, and now she's pointing at a Newman, I need to know whether I'm protecting a client from slander or preparing for a criminal fallout. Victor stepped closer. You are preparing to do exactly what I hire you to do. Michael exhaled. That was not denial. That was strategy. And strategy, where Victor Newman was concerned, almost always meant the threat was real. Phyllis arrived at the ranch uninvited. Nikki, to her credit, barely blinked. This ought to be good. It won't be, Phyllis said, striding into the living room, because either somebody kidnapped Patty over an old Chancellor secret, or somebody wants us all tearing each other apart over one. And honestly, both options scream Newman. Nikki stiffened. Excuse me? You heard me. Victor entered from his office before Nikki could answer. You should leave. Phyllis laughed. Oh no, I just got here, and I have questions. Victor's tone dropped. This is not your concern. Patty disappearing is everybody's concern, especially when she sends out a creepy little video message naming your family without naming which one. Nikki stepped between them emotionally, if not physically. Phyllis, this is reckless, even for you. Reckless? Nikki, Patty said the wrong Newman buried the truth. Not a Newman, the wrong Newman. That means there was another Newman who should have been blamed or protected or exposed. Victor's expression did not move, but Phyllis saw it. A flicker, recognition. Got you, she thought. Aloud, she said, so who was it, Victor? Victor's voice became dangerously soft. Leave. Phyllis smiled without warmth. That's what I thought. She turned and walked out, but not before catching Nikki's face. Worried, not confused. Worried, meaning Nikki knew something too. Maybe not the whole story, but enough to be afraid of where it led. The second day of captivity changed the temperature in the room. No more false civility. No more gentle questions. Her kidnapper paced. Patty watched him with a curious calm that unsettled even him. You're stalling, he said. And you're sweating, she replied. We all have hobbies. He slammed both hands on the table. Tell me what else you remember. Patty flinched but recovered quickly. I remember you were always sloppy in the details. That earned her a sharp slap across the face. The room spun. She tasted blood. He leaned close. Careful. Patty lifted her chin. Tears sprang to her eyes, but not surrender. No, she whispered. You be careful. His brow tightened, and Patty smiled through the pain. Because if I remembered enough to scare you, she said, then I remembered enough to save somewhere else. For the first time, he looked rattled. He grabbed her shoulders. What did you do? Patty laughed. Not because it was funny, because terror had reached its limit and transformed into something dangerous. You really thought I kept everything in my head? She whispered. That was your first mistake. He shoved her back. What did you do? She did not answer, because suddenly she had power. Tiny, fragile, possibly fatal, but power. And Patty Williams, once she had even a sliver of power, could become impossible to predict. Near midnight, Chance and a small tactical team approached the storage property outside Genoa City. Wind scraped across the open lots. The unit stood in rows like sealed graves. Paul joined him in a bulletproof vest he clearly hated wearing. Chance signaled the team into position. Unit 14, lights were spotted an hour ago. Paul kept his weapon low. If she's in there, we go, careful. A beat. Then they moved. The lock was fresh. The door rattled upward with a metallic scream. Inside, a folding chair, rope, an overturned water bottle, a stained blanket, a table with an old photograph. But no Patty. Paul cursed under his breath. Chance scanned the room. They cleared out fast. Then his flashlight hit the wall. 6 words, written in red marker, jagged and hurried. Ask Nikki what she destroyed. First, Paul stared. Chance lowered the beam. This just got bigger. Paul's phone was already in his hand. Because whether Patty wrote it, the kidnapper wrote it, or both were now playing each other, one truth was obvious. Nikki Newman was no longer on the edges of this. She was in the center. Nikki did not crumble when Paul confronted her, but she sat down. And in Nikki Newman, sitting down at the wrong moment was practically a confession. They were in the ranch living room. Victor stood nearby, radiating fury. Nick had arrived midway through and now looked between them all as if he had walked into Act 3 of a play nobody had explained. Paul placed the photo on the table, then the printout of the storage wall message. Nikki stared at both. "Tell me," Paul said. Nikki closed her eyes. Victor's voice was iron. "You don't say a word." Paul shot him a glare. "This isn't your call." Nikki opened her eyes again, older suddenly. 12 years ago, she said quietly, there was a file. Nick frowned. "What file?" Nikki did not look at him. "Something involving Chancellor Holdings, an irregular transfer. It implicated someone attending that gala." Paul stepped closer. "Who?" Nikki swallowed. "Not Victor?" Victor turned sharply. "Nikki—" She ignored him. "It implicated one of the children," she said. Nick went pale. "Which one?" Nikki's eyes filled. "Adam." The room fell into stunned silence. Nick stepped back. "No." Victor's jaw clenched hard enough to crack stone. Paul stared at Nikki. "You destroyed the file?" "I thought I was protecting my son." Paul's expression hardened. "From what?" Nikki's voice shook. "From becoming his father too soon." Victor exploded. "That is enough." But Nikki was done hiding. "No, Victor, it is not enough. I burned the evidence, and then you let everyone assume the damage began elsewhere. We told ourselves we were containing a mistake, but that mistake grew teeth." Nick's voice broke. "Adam knew?" Nikki hesitated. Then, "I don't know." Victor's silence made that answer feel far worse. When Adam arrived, summoned but not prepared, the room changed again. He looked from Nikki's tears to Nick's shock to Victor's granite fury. "Well," Adam said dryly, "this seems festive." Nobody smiled. Paul faced him directly. "Were you involved in a Chancellor file disappearance tied to an old gala?" Adam blinked once, then laughed. "Amazing. Even by this family's standards, that is vague." Nikki stood. "Adam." Something in her tone cut through his sarcasm. His face shifted. "What did you do?" Nick asked. Adam turned to him slowly. "Excuse me?" "What did you do?" Nick repeated, louder. "What was in that file?" Adam looked at Victor. Victor said nothing, and that silence told Adam everything. His amusement vanished. He stared at Nikki. "You burned something." Nikki's tears spilled. "I thought I was saving you." Adam's voice became very quiet. "From what?" she whispered. "From prison." Nick inhaled sharply. Paul watched Adam closely, but Adam barely seemed to see him. He was somewhere else now, back in old shadows, old manipulations, old half-truths he had lived inside for so long they had become architecture. "What did I do?" he asked. Victor finally spoke. "You followed instructions without understanding the consequences." Adam snapped his head toward him. "That sounds like your autobiography, not mine." Victor stepped forward. "You will control yourself." "No." Adam laughed once, bitter and broken. "No, I think I'm done doing that whenever this family unearths another buried mine with my name on it." He turned back to Nikki. "What did I do?" Nikki whispered. "You moved the file." Adam went still, his eyes unfocused, then refocused with dawning horror. "I remember," he said. Nobody breathed. "I thought it was routine," he continued. "I was told it was a duplicate set of transfer records being taken to legal. I moved it from the gala office to the car." His face drained, and then it was gone. Victor closed his eyes for one fraction of a second. Adam saw it and understood. "You used me." Victor's stare hardened. "I protected you." Adam laughed again, rawer now. "No, you framed my ignorance as loyalty and let Mom burn the evidence to cover your trail." Nick ran a hand over his face. "My God." Paul's phone buzzed. He checked it and swore. Chance had found something else. A second video upload. From Patty. Alive. For now. They gathered around the phone. Patty appeared again, weaker this time, but still astonishingly focused. She looked directly into the camera and said, "Adam carried it. Victor buried it." The clip ended. Nobody moved. Nikki covered her mouth. Nick stared at Victor in disbelief. Adam's face went empty in the worst possible way. Paul looked at Victor. "You want to deny it?" Victor lifted his chin. "I want a lawyer present before another word is spoken." Michael, who had entered only seconds before and heard enough to regret being alive, muttered, "Of course you do." Adam turned to Victor with a look so cold it could have frozen the room solid. "All these years," Adam said, "I thought I was the family screw-up by nature." Turns out I was just the family tool by design. Victor's tone sharpened. You will not speak to me that way. Adam stepped closer. Then maybe don't build your empire on my blind spots. Nick intervened before it became physical, but the damage was done. Not just legal, not just corporate, personal, catastrophic. Patty's 6 words had split the Newmans open with surgical precision, and somewhere, whoever kidnapped her was almost certainly counting on that. Chance called Paul away from the room. We traced the second upload, he said. Bounced through 3 servers, but one physical relay point is local. Where? An abandoned lake house on the eastern road. Paul's pulse surged. We move now. Chance hesitated. One more thing. We found a deposit box record in Patty's name. Paul frowned. Patty had a deposit box? Apparently. It was opened yesterday morning by proxy authorization. By who? Chance exhaled. No name, but the contents list included a cassette tape, 2 photos, and a handwritten statement. Paul went still. Patty had done exactly what she hinted she had done. She had saved the truth somewhere else, meaning this kidnapping had failed in its original goal, which meant Patty was now more dangerous to her captor alive than dead. Move! Paul snapped, and they did. Rain began just as the police vehicles killed their lights near the tree line. Paul and Chance advanced on foot. The lake house stood crooked and dark, one downstairs window glowing faintly amber. Inside, a man's shadow moved. Chance signaled left. Paul nodded. Then a scream tore through the night. Patty! They hit the door hard. It splintered inward. Chaos followed. A lamp crashed. A gun flashed. Chance tackled a figure near the stairs. Paul shoved past overturned furniture toward the back room. Patty sat tied to a chair, gag half off, eyes wild. Paul, she cried. He cut her free while officers shouted from the other room. You're okay, he said, though they both knew that was a lie. Patty grabbed his wrist with startling force. He knows about the box. Who is he? She looked past him toward the hallway where officers were dragging the suspect into view. For a heartbeat, Paul didn't recognize him. Then memory clicked. The man from the photo. And older now, but unmistakable, a fixer, a financial operative, one of the ghosts from Chancellor's ugliest years. Patty laughed shakily, almost hysterically. I told you, she whispered. I told all of you the ghost was in the picture. Hours later, wrapped in a blanket at the hospital, Patty looked smaller than usual. Not less intense, just smaller. Paul sat across from her with a recorder on the table. You don't have to do this tonight. Yes, I do, Patty said. Because tomorrow everybody gets stupid again. Paul almost smiled. Fair. She took a breath. At the gala, I saw Adam carrying a file to the parking area. He looked nervous, young, eager to please. Then Victor met with that man. She pointed weakly toward the window, meaning the arrested fixer. And the file changed hands.